So you can come in with me to take your post-test. Does a Tuesday or Thursday work with you?
Yeah, that's fine. What test am I taking now?
Let me see. I have to check your file. It's just in the program. And it's how basically we get our funding to make this program free.
Okay, sounds good. And day you have in mind?
I'm looking to see which test you need. Give me a second. So you will have to take the math test. So that's good because that's your last test, right?
Right, after the science on the 16th.
Correct. So I'm going to do it after the science on the 16th so that we're not kind of like meshing things together here.
Okay.
So you're going to do that then. So we're not going to burden you with it on that next like day because that kind of falls with the Easter holiday. So let's do it after the Easter holiday. You could either do the 22nd right after Easter. You could do the 24th or
22nd's fine.
Okay. Can you come in around 12:30, 1 o'clock?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Okay. So I'll put you in then. We're on the second floor. Did you come here for your orientation?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just in the next office right down on that floor.
Okay.
So, does anyone else need to speak to Autumn? Autumn, I got Rihanna scheduled for her post to come to LBI. So I think everyone's good on scheduling for the post.
Okay, I talked to Melissa and she would like to get a pen commercial, so I'm going to email Jill about that. Is that okay?
That's fine, yeah.
Alright, sounds good.
Except I think we lost her now.
Okay.
Is she stuck in the breakout room? She is.
Oh, okay. I told her about going in the back, but she might not know. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm going to try to move her back. If I just close all the breakout rooms, maybe she can come back.
Alright, sounds good.
I was like, where'd she go? So it's 1 minute, so hopefully she'll come back in a minute. Does anyone else need to talk to Autumn about anything? All right. We'll keep moving on then. Thanks for helping out there, Autumn.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Do you want me to stay on a few more minutes, or?
I think they're all good.
All right, sounds good then. I was going to say I have Ruthie's class over there too, so.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. So we're going to keep moving with class. I'm going to put your news up here for you first.
Day. Happy April Fools. Keep your head on a swivel because there are
Happy April Fool's Day.
April 1st custom consisting of practical jokes and hoaxes. No one is safe. All right.
Hello, Discover.
We start today with the economy. There are two main parts of the economy.
I'm
There's
good, little
Wall Street,
AB.
or the stock market, and there's Main Street, also called the real economy. Let's start with Main Street. When you buy groceries or pay for a new streaming service, you are participating in the real economy. These are the goods and services we buy and sell every day. Right now, the real economy, the cost of goods and services, well, those prices are not so great. Prices have gone up because of inflation, and inflation is just okay lately. Not great, not terrible, just okay. But there are signs that inflation could get worse, meaning prices could go up. And that leads us to the second part of the economy, Wall Street. Wall Street is the stock market. In the stock market, you can buy small parts of companies. Of course, we know them as shares or stocks. Most people buy a share of a company because they think the company is going to do well, and the value of that share will go up. The stock market is a little more complicated than that, of course, but that's the basic idea. Wall Street and Main Street are often connected. If things aren't going well on Main Street in the real economy, then investors on Wall Street sell their shares because they think maybe the value of the stocks they own are likely to go down because companies might struggle. Our Matt Egan breaks down some of the latest economic numbers that show us where Wall Street and Main Street may be headed.
The latest slew of economic indicators did not paint a very inspiring picture about how the U.S. economy is holding up amid all of this turbulence out of Washington. And these new economic numbers did not sit well with investors on Wall Street, with U.S. stocks experiencing another bout of turbulence ahead of next week's significant announcements on tariffs. So let me run you through some of the key findings from today's economic reports. First, the Fed's go-to inflation metric found that Americans are saving more and they're spending next ahead of tariffs. And this report also suggested that inflation's kind of stuck in this no man's land, right? Not as bad as a few years ago, but also not great. Core inflation, which excludes food and energy, it heated up in February. That's significant because economists say that core inflation is a better indicator of underlying pricing pressures. And keep in mind, these are numbers for February, so they don't fully capture the elephant in the room, the trade war, right? This is price changes before much of the tariffs, including the tariffs on steel and aluminum, the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and some of the tariffs on China, for all of that even kicked in. And we know the cost of living, of course, is a major concern right now. And so there was another disappointing confidence report out. This is from the University of Michigan. And not only did it find that consumer sentiment fell sharply in March, but some of the underlying indicators here were also concerning. Consumers' outlook for the future fell significantly. 2/3 of consumers are now expecting unemployment to increase. That's the most since the Great Recession. And consumer expectations around inflation, price increases, they heated up to the highest level since 1993. Market veteran Art Hogan, he told me he's not shocked to see consumers expecting higher inflation. This is the worst trade war since William McKinley was in the White House. This finding from University of Michigan was striking. They said that this month's decline reflects a clear consensus across all demographics and political affiliations. Republicans joined independents and Democrats in expressing worsening expectations since February for their personal finances, business conditions, unemployment, and inflation. I think the growing concern on Wall Street is that weak consumer confidence will eventually cause people to kind of hunker down and spend less money. And of course, that's where the real trouble would come for an economy that is really built on consumer spending.
Pop quiz hot shot. When was the first drone ever flown? 1899, 1917, 1948, or 2001?
Make sure you're marking your answer in the poll, please. So 11 is greater than or equal to 7. So you know right off the bat, you can get rid of the equal sign. You can get rid of the just greater than. It's got to have the line under it. And 11 is the larger, so it's going to be A. The opening to the triangle point, or the opening to the triangle is open to the bigger. It points to the smaller. Questions on that? Try this one. It's only going to be A, B, or C. There's no D.
So 88 is greater than 12. Is greater.
So waiting on 2 answers here.
Hi, are you Filipino? Yes, I'm a Filipino. Yeah. Oh. Oh. Okay, bye. Thank you.
So waiting on 1. Just make sure you're getting your answers in. Here again, remember 88 is larger, so the opening is going to go to the 88, points to the smaller number than negative. Questions here? If you're having trouble using that poll, please let me know. Try this one.
Hello, Archen. Hello, Arcana. How are you? Thank you for watching my live.
Still waiting on a couple answers here. The 5 is greater than 0 here. So C for your answer. Questions on this one? Okay, mark your answer on this one, matching that number sentence.
Write the sentence as a mathematical statement. 13 is less than or equal to 16. Letter C. Letter C. C. English or Spanish? No, it's Filipino.
Okay, so 13 is less than or equal to, we know we can get rid of B and D at that point. So 13 is less than, that is going to be your A.
It's letter
Questions here?
A. I'm wrong.
Try this one.
Write the sentence as a math. 47 is not equal to negative 47. Can you say hi, May? Hello, May. 47. I will put letter D. What's your favorite food? Oh, a lot. I have a lot of favorite food. Thanks. Thank you for watching my live, guys. Can you see the bear here on my back? I love it. I have company here. I have company. Hey, do you know I show speed? Yeah, the black guy. Where is your son? Oh, they're in school, and I'm in school too. I think if your son is sleeping, no, they're in school. It's already 9 o'clock here. 9:43 a.m. It's morning. It's morning here. Good night. Bye. I need to sleep. Okay, bye.
Still waiting on 3 answers here. Remember, you need to be marking these in your poll.
It's the world. I wanna be where it's morning here too. Where are you from, Celia? Where are you from? To you, I wanna
Just so we
know
went over how to open it back up in onboarding.
this
You hit the
world
more button and then it should come back up.
and
Okay, there we go. My bad.
I smile. Oh, no. Just for a while. Just for a while. If the world is so, I wanna be with you.
So I'm not totally just being a pain about you guys answering these in the poll. Like, I can see there's still someone not answering. When you're not answering, I simply just don't count your time in class because it's like you're not an active participant. You signed that you would be an active participant when you came to orientation. So one person has not answered any questions yet. You know who you are. So I take off the 30 minutes that you haven't answered. Not being mean, but that's how it works. Just so you guys know that. So when you're saying, oh, can I have a practice test? Well, you haven't hit your hours because you haven't actively participated in class. So just so you guys know, just signing in doesn't necessarily get you your hours. All right, let's look at this one. So 47 is not equal to. When you see not equal to, that's only one symbol here. You look at the equal to sign with the slash.
Finally, I'm
So
perfect.
E is your answer there.
Yes, letter D. Finally, I only one answer. After all, I got right. I got checked.
All right. Oh, gonna switch over to this.
Module.
Let me add the inhaling here.
To you, I wanna love just for a while. Oh no. I wanna be with you.
Take a look at my number line here. In the center, you have 0. To the right, you have all the positive numbers, and to the left, you have all the negative numbers.
Yes.
Positive and negative numbers on the number line are called integers. And I'd like us to do some comparing of these numbers, keeping in mind that the one to the right is always larger.
Larger.
Think of your bank account having 0 in it, and anything above 0 is good. You've got money in your checking account. If you have anything in the negative, it means you're overdrawn. Now, here's the interesting thing that we sometimes forget. As the numbers appear to get larger as we go to the left with our negative numbers, they are in fact getting smaller. You're overdrawn by $1, but it's much worse to be overdrawn by $10. So the higher the numbers go, the smaller they get. So let's do some comparison with our inequality signs. Let's say I have a -2 is less than 0. Well, here's a -2, and here's 0.
Hello,
0
hello,
is to the
Tan.
right. So -2 is less than 0. How about -7 is less than a -4? Here's a -4 on the number line, and you can see that it is to the right of the -7. So a -7 is less than a -4. Let's try, let's say 6 is greater than 0. 6 is to the right of 0, and 6 is greater than 0. Okay, let's try just a couple more. How about -1 is greater than -9? -1 is to the right of -9. Some people also look and say, well, it's closer to 0. Well, that's nice on the negative side, but that doesn't really work on the right-hand side. So always go with the number to the right of another number is larger. So a -1 is greater than a -9. All right, how about -4 is less than 2? Here's the 2 on the number line, and -4 is to the left, or 2 is to the right of the -4. So that's a true statement. -4 is less than 2. All right. Now let's also look at something called absolute value. Let me write that for you. Absolute value. A sample of it would look like this. Absolute value simply means how many jumps to get back to 0. So it's never negative. It's not negative jumps or positive jumps. It's just jumps back to 0. So if I were to give you this, if I were to say what is the absolute value of 5, I would go over to 5 and I would count how many jumps to get back to 0. I'm at 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 jumps to get back to 0, so I bring it out of its absolute value signs, and the answer is 5. The absolute value of a -3 says, let's go to a -3 on the number line, right here, and how many jumps to get back to 0?
1, 2,
2,
3.
So the -3 comes out as a +3. So it doesn't matter if you have fractions or decimals or whole numbers, it always comes out positive. Let me give you some more examples. The absolute value of 1/2,
1/2.
it comes out as 1/2.
1/2.
The absolute value of -11, how many jumps back to 0 from -11 will be 11. Bring it out of the absolute value bars. And maybe I have 4.2. Well, it's 4.2 jumps back to 0. So I'll bring it out of absolute value for 4.2. Absolute value is always, always, always going to be positive. There's a but coming, but we'll talk about that in a minute. All right. Now, let's compare some numbers when they're in absolute value. We've already been comparing numbers, just plain numbers. Now we're going to do it in absolute value. Let's say that we have an absolute value of a -7 is being compared to an absolute value of 5. You cannot compare numbers in absolute value till you bring them out of the absolute value bars. So I will bring the -7 out as a +7, and I'll bring the 5 out as a +5, because that's how many jumps back to 0. Now that I've brought them out of absolute value, 7 is greater than 5, and I'll put my greater than sign, or I could do my greater than, or equal to sign. Okay, let's try another one. Let's say that I have 4.7 in absolute value, and I would like to compare it to a -4.3 in absolute value. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. It always is going to come out how? That's right, as a positive. So this comes out as 4.7. This comes out as 4.3. 4.7 is greater than 4.3. So we'll put our inequality sign in right there. All right. Let's try one where one of them is absolute value and one of them is not. Let's say we have a -17, and I'm comparing it to a 16. Well, there's nothing to worry about. 16 is still 16. But absolute value of a -17 is what?
17.
That's true. It is a
17.
+17. +17. So it comes out as a positive, and I'm comparing it now to a 16, and 17 is greater than 16. So remember, when you are doing absolute value, you always bring the number out of the absolute value signs and make it positive. When you're comparing numbers that are in absolute value, bring them out first and then compare them.
Alright, so looking at this number line, you have to match up the set of numbers there with which number line it matches to, A or B.
Matches. Graph each set of numbers of the line 8642. Eight. 6. 's letter B. Letter B. I wanna go just for a while. Gonna charge this one.
Okay, so -8, -6, -4 and -2 is line B. Questions on that one? Okay, these ones you're taking out of absolute value. Remember, it's how many jumps back to 0.
Oh my god, hi, hello. I always wanted if someone said my name on YouTube. I can't read your name, I'm so sorry. Insert inappropriate space to make this 8 less than. Okay, less than. Negative. I think it's equal. I think C. C. Hello there, hello. Hi, chicken. I wanna dance just for a while and die with a smile and a world of soul. I wanna be with you. Ooh, ooh, I wanna that dream all the time that I love. This tomorrow. Just in a lifetime. If the world is all I will be to you. Hi Santa, hello. Just for a while, and I will smile.
So when you pull that -8 out, it becomes +8. 0 stays 0, so 8 is greater than 0, or C for your answer. Okay, try this one.
Oh. I wanna be where to you. I wanna go down just for a while. With a smile. Can you see my name, Abby, for me? Hello, Abby. Thank you so much.
So 117, when we pull it out, it becomes just a positive 117 or D. Absolute value here.
Find absolute value. It's negative 21. Just for a while. Excuse me. Hello, Alicia. Like and subscribe and share share your blessings there. If you like my content, please share your blessings. If you like my live. I have not seen you in ages. What do you mean? I see your brothers. I saw you before. Where?
So when you pull that negative 21 out, it becomes positive 21 or A. Try this one.
In the kitchen. Which kitchen? Insert in the appropriate space to make the statement true. Oops. On live. Oh yeah, it was me. Yeah, I was on live when I was on live when sometimes in the kitchen. Yeah, I was not feeling well this, like these past few days. I have my period. I have heavy period, so and my face is very ugly to show off on the live. Hi, do you want $1 million? Are you sick? Yes, this past few days I was not feeling good. Because I have my period, so and because I miss being here on the live, so I just go live. But I'm a little bit okay now. I will give you $1 million if you
Okay, so
say
that negative
one
15
country in
will pull
Asia.
out and be positive 15. 15 is greater than negative 14 or C for your answer here.
Yeah.
Any questions on any of these?
I like.
Okay.
It probe me if you can give me $1 million. Just hit the button there
Let me switch over
for
here.
a super likes. Send me super likes or super stickers.
We are going to look at the Underground Railroad today. And then I'll let you have you guys your break, and then we'll do science too.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Clint Smith, and this is Crash Course Black American History. If you're like me, when you first heard of this thing called the Underground Railroad, steam engines that crisscross the southern United States in dark tunnels surrounded by soil and rock. These trains, I thought, carried enslaved people from the violence of their plantations to the freedom of northern cities. I imagined it kind of like the subway system of New York City, except with a lot less rats. Some writers, like the Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Colson Whitehead, have even imagined this real-life train system
SpongeBob,
in their
it's
stories,
April Fool's
depicting
Day.
the Underground Railroad
Yeah.
as something that traversed across the South, making stops in each state to collect enslaved people who had escaped and were trying to make their way to freedom. But the reality is, despite what third-grade Clint thought, the Underground Railroad wasn't an actual railroad. It was, in fact, something even more remarkable. It was a group of people who used their homes, their heads, and their hearts to secretly help enslaved people make their way out of the South and toward what they hoped would be a better future. These were people, black and white alike, who often risked everything to help people they didn't even know. But they helped them because they knew that slavery was wrong, and they wanted to play whatever small role they could in helping as many people as possible reach freedom. The Underground Railroad is an incredible part of American history, and it is also something that has been mythologized in ways that aren't always accurate. But today, we're going to separate fact from fiction. Let's get started.
It was beautiful
we've established
smiling.
that the Underground Railroad wasn't an actual railroad. But it's also important to know that even the metaphorical railroad wasn't a centrally organized endeavor. There were no headquarters, no comprehensive maps, no Underground Railroad magazine. Many people who we now view as part of the Underground Railroad across the country didn't actually know anything about one another. The Underground Railroad was made of individuals and small networks of people working together amid the larger, less centralized operation. And while the Underground Railroad wasn't a literal train, they did often use the language of train infrastructure. The various stops and safe houses could be known as stations. The guides who led the escapees to different stations were conductors, and the folks who hid escaped slaves in their homes might be known as station masters. Harriet Tubman, among the most famous conductors, used this sort of language herself, saying in 1896, quote, "I was the conductor of the Underground Railroad for 8 years, and I can say what most conductors can't say. I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger." It's unclear where the term
Wow,
Underground Railroad first originated,
Underground
but
Railroad.
it's said to have first appeared in an 1839 newspaper. Frederick Douglass alludes to it in his
Wow.
1845 autobiography, where he expresses frustration at the abolitionists who have been talking about the network with such a lack of discretion that he says is turning the operation into an upperground railroad. See, Douglass thought that this might compromise the entire operation. He wanted it to be something more covert, more underground. Sometimes, when people tell the story of the Underground Railroad, what they imagine, and what some early scholars depicted in their own work, was a network made primarily of benevolent white abolitionists who helped escape slaves who couldn't help themselves. And while there were many white abolitionists who were absolutely involved in the system, sometimes this story
Come back
can lead
next
to many
time.
people
Okay,
ignoring
thank
or
you.
erasing the fact that it was mostly black people who were part of and who led the Underground Railroad's efforts. What's more, there were also differences in the consequences and implications of their work if they were caught. Many white abolitionists would face fines or public shame, depending on the community in which they were operating. But for most black abolitionists and escapees, everything was on the line. They could be returned to slavery, tortured, or even killed. It's worth homing in on one person who played a specifically noteworthy role in the operation. His name is William Still. and he came to be known by many as the father of the Underground Railroad. Let's go to the thought bubble. William Still was born in Burlington County, New Jersey in 1821 to Charity and Levin Still, both of whom were formerly enslaved. He was the youngest of 18 children. In 1847, William, who had moved to Philadelphia, was hired as a clerk for the Pennsylvania Society for the Abolition of Slavery. And when abolitionists in Philadelphia organized a vigilance committee to provide assistance to escaped slaves, Still became the chairman of the group and a leader of Philadelphia's black community. He and his wife Letitia moved into a row house that would become a well-known station on the Underground Railroad. During his abolitionist work in Philadelphia, William Still helped nearly 800 enslaved people escape to freedom. But don't get lost in the numbers. Each of these people had a face, a name, a story. And each of those stories was one that Still believed was worth preserving. So what he did was interview those individuals who escaped as they passed through Philadelphia, and he kept meticulous records about where they were coming from and where they were going. He knew that such a detailed record could help reunite families who were separated under slavery. These records eventually became a book published in 1872, known as the Underground Railroad Records, which chronicles the stories of 649 enslaved people who escaped to freedom. To this day, it remains an invaluable resource for scholars in helping understand the context and methods of the people who escaped the claws of slavery. And reportedly, Still himself said, quote, "The heroism and desperate struggle that many of our people had to endure should be kept green in the memory of this and coming generations." Thanks, Thought Bubble. Another thing I believed when I was younger was that millions of enslaved people escaped through the Underground Railroad to freedom. But that's not really true. Scholars still debate the actual number, but the historian Eric Foner estimates that between 1830 and 1860, some 30,000 fugitives were at some stage part of the Underground Railroad. But other scholars believe that the number was closer to 50,000, and some think it was twice that many. So compared to the millions of people who were enslaved throughout America's history, tens of thousands doesn't seem like that much. And to be clear, it's not to say that their lives don't matter, or that their success in finding some semblance of freedom should be taken for granted. Even just one person finding freedom is meaningful. But at the same time, we shouldn't delude ourselves into thinking that huge percentages of enslaved people escaped, because that simply isn't true. This is important because sometimes that myth can be used to mitigate our collective discomfort around this country's history of slavery. If we can convince ourselves that so many people escaped, then maybe it will let us feel a little bit less horrible about what happened here. But we can't let that be the case. We have to sit with the discomfort. And the existence of the Underground Railroad can't be used as a way to run from that. Additionally, what was in some ways just as important as the actual number of enslaved people who escaped is the symbolism of what the Underground Railroad represented. It was something that represented hope and
Hi,
possibility for
Natisa.
many
Hello.
enslaved people, and also something that instilled an enormous amount of fear in enslavers. I mean, these are many of the same people who believed in Samuel Cartwright's bizarre contention that black people who wanted to run away
I'm good. How
were
are
actually
you?
suffering from a disease, something he called drapetomania. Cartwright mentions two potential treatments for the disease: treating one's slaves kindly but firmly, or failing that, quote, whipping the devil out of them. The Underground Railroad is actually one of the reasons that many southern states were so adamant about passing the Fugitive Slave Law of 1850, so that even if their enslaved property escaped to the north, these northern states would, by law, be required to assist the slave catchers and slaveholders in recapturing the escapees. If they didn't, there would be a significant fine. What's more, the way the judicial system was set up at the time made it so that the commissioners were incentivized to side with the slave catchers, because they would pay $10 for a decision that confirmed the black person as escaped property, and only $5 for a ruling that stated a given suspect was free. Another really important part of the story of the Underground Railroad is that while it focuses on people escaping to the north, the majority of enslaved people who attempted to escape actually did so by escaping to the Caribbean, Spanish Florida, Native American communities in the southeast United States, free black communities in the upper south, and Mexico. In 1829, Mexican President Vicente Guerrero, who was himself a mixed European, Native American, and African ancestry abolished slavery in the country. Subsequently, many enslaved people who lived near the U.S.-Mexico border sought their freedom in America's neighbor to the south. Altogether, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Catherine Schultz argues that those groups of people combined likely outnumber the people who escaped to either northern free states or Canada. I think there's another important thing to say here, and it's that when I was younger, I silently wondered why every enslaved person couldn't simply escape slavery if they didn't want to be enslaved. I heard the stories of the Underground Railroad. I heard the stories of people like
I'm good,
Douglass,
Nakisha.
or
Thank
even Henry
you.
Box Brown, who actually snuck into a crate and shipped himself to freedom on a 27-hour-long trip from Richmond, Virginia to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I heard these stories and I found myself angered by the idea of those who didn't escape. Had they not tried hard enough? Didn't they care enough to do something? Did they choose to remain enslaved? On the one hand, it's definitely important to learn about enslaved people who escaped. At the same time, sometimes we can unintentionally lift up only the stories of exceptional people or exceptional acts in ways that implicitly blame those who cannot, despite the most brutal of circumstances, attain such superhuman heights. And sometimes this can take away a focus
Hello,
from blaming the
Romanza.
system, the people who built it, and the people who maintained it. There were other brilliant, exceptional people who lived under slavery, and many resisted the institution in innumerable ways. But our country's teachings about slavery, painfully limited, often focus singularly on heroic slave narratives and Underground Railroad stories of daring escapes, at the expense of the millions of men and women whose stories might be less
Thank you so much.
but are no less worthy of being told. The vast majority of enslaved people did not escape, but that doesn't mean they didn't want to. It means that they were part of a system that threatened them with violence if they did, that threatened their family, friends, and community with violence if they tried, and in which the specter of violence and separation hung over everything they did. But as we've talked about, resistance to slavery does not only include slave uprisings and escapes. It is the millions of small moments in which someone reclaims agency for themselves amid an institution that is constantly attempting to take that away. The Underground Railroad is one example of how enslaved people tried to find their freedom. But it is not the only way. Far from it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Crash Course is made possible with the help of all these nice people, and our animation team is Thought Cafe. Crash Course is a Complexity production, and if you'd like to keep Crash Course free for everybody, forever, you can support the series at Patreon, a crowdfunding platform that allows you to support the content.
Alright guys, I have a map we're gonna look at to go along with the Underground Railroad here.
Map. Underground Railroad routes in New York State. By staff writers, Musalist staff. Freedom seekers followed several different routes into and out of New York State. From New York City, many moved east to Long Island and across Long Island Sound into Connecticut. Others traveled north along the Hudson River to Albany. From Albany, people followed the Erie Canal west before going to Canada through Oswego, Rochester, Buffalo, or Lewiston. Others traveled north from Maryland and Virginia through Pennsylvania, following the Susquehanna River Valley before entering Binghamton, Elmira, or smaller communities, then moving north along the Finger Lakes. In western New York, another stream of freedom seekers traveled from Cleveland and Fredonia into Buffalo. These routes converged at key nodes.
Alright, so when we look at this, I want you to take note of the key there. The cities are marked with the open circle. The railroad stations, the Underground Railroad houses basically, are marked there with the closed circle. Then you have your distances there. So if you were needing to measure, you could use a ruler or use something to measure up against it. Sometimes if you don't have a ruler, you could use like a piece of paper, draw that key, measure along to see like the 100 miles, to make it 200, 300, so on, to see how far they're going. So like if you were to say from Binghamton, or, how far would it be to go from, New York up to Albany, if you were to like guess it out there. You guys take a guess and tell me. Anyone?
I would have to say like 150 to 200 miles.
Yeah, 150 or so. So this just gives you like a rough estimate, little work with using maps. You'll probably see maps on that social studies test that you have. So this is one of those types of activities. Questions on that? Anybody? Okay. And then let me switch over here. There is a primary source one here for you to look at. Just gotta get to it. You're going to see a lot of the primary source things on the social studies, where you're going to have to look at the maps, look at the pictures, things like that. So, just let it open and load here.
Oh my god, I thought it's... Oh my
Okay,
god.
so this one's kind of like the conductors on the Underground Railroad, and it's going to show you a couple questions on here. It shows you a picture drawn up. So this was African Americans in the wagon on foot escaping from the enslavement. Obviously, somebody drew this up. This would have been a picture from like a postcard at that point in time.
Primary sources: Conductor on the Underground Railroad, Part 1, by original document from the public domain. Published February 8, 2017. The first in a two-part series. Editor's note: The Underground Railroad was a network of free African Americans and sympathetic white people that helped enslaved people escape to a free North. The railroad was a series of stops in local northern homes. John P. Parker was born with slave status in Norfolk, Virginia, but he became a freeman by 1845. He moved to Ripley, Ohio, where there was an active abolitionist community. He worked as an iron maker by day, and by night he rescued enslaved people. Parker helped hundreds escape to freedom across the Ohio River from Kentucky along the busiest segment of the railroad. He then passed them to another conductor, braving dangers. The document below is an excerpt of a published autobiography compiled from newspaper interviews with Parker in 1885. The first adventure promoted me to move to Ripley, where there was an iron foundry. To give you the real background of my activities, it is necessary to tell you about Ripley in 1845. At that time, it was as busy as a beehive. There was no town along the Ohio River except Cincinnati that was in its class. There was a group of live men there that made it the center of industry and finance. There was Samuel Hemphill, Archibald Leggett, the Boyntons, Thomas McCaig, James Reynolds were the leaders.
I'm gonna put the poll up for you guys. Most of you are choosing A here, which is not correct. And then we have B and D. The answer is actually going to be C, which no one chose. Questions on that? So he was moving to actually get that job.
There were the upper and lower boat yards, busy the year round. The upper boat yard was the oldest and larger of the two, located at the mouth of Red Oak Creek. There was a jut of land below the creek, which gave the boatyard a safe harbor, winter and summer. 100 flatboats were made here in 1 year for Vevey, Indiana, to float hay down the river. These boats were turned out in quantities and very rapidly all winter long.